On a forgotten desert world, one man chose silence for 16 long years, hiding from war, from people, and from his own past. But one morning, his alarm sounded for the first time, and at his gate stood 9 mysterious women with glowing skin and eyes that carried both sorrow and secrets. What they asked of him would shatter his solitude forever and ignite a journey that could change not only his life, but the fate of 2 worlds. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The desert of Aurora 9 stretched endlessly beneath 2 pale suns. Sand and stone rolled for miles without mercy, painting the world in harsh tones of orange and red. On the edge of this barren land stood a compound of steel and stone. Its walls were high, built to withstand storms and solitude. This was the home of Daniel Carver. Daniel had been here for 16 long years. Once an engineer on Earth, he had turned his back on crowded cities, endless politics, and everything he ever needed to do, and bitter wars. On Aurora 9, he found silence. His days followed a strict pattern. Each morning, he rose before dawn. He inspected the perimeter sensors. He checked the solar panels and the water filters. He tended the rows of green plants inside his hydroponic garden. Then, he brewed the one luxury he had refused to abandon, a steaming cup of real coffee. His body was strong, hardened by years of physical work. His face was carved by wind and sun, lined with years of memory he rarely allowed himself to revisit. At 53, he was not an old man, but solitude had made him older than his years. He often muttered to himself, half in habit, half to keep his voice from forgetting how to sound human. Daniel had chosen silence, and silence had chosen him. No neighbors, no family, no voices but his own. The nearest human outpost was more than 300 miles away, a distance he never wished to travel. The world had wars enough. Here, in his fortress of metal and sand, he could live without the weight of it. The compound was both his prison and his kingdom. He expanded it slowly over time, adding chambers, workrooms, and storage bays. Each wall was built by his own hand. Each tool was arranged with precision. Order gave him comfort. It gave him control in a universe that had long ago spun beyond his command. On this particular morning, Daniel stood on the observation deck. The rising suns cast long shadows across the dunes. The wind carried a low howl, a sound that had become the music of his life. He lifted his mug, the steam warming his face, and whispered, "Another day in paradise." He returned inside, moving through the familiar rhythm of his tasks. Systems check, water balance, temperature control. It was repetition that had shaped his survival, repetition that shielded him from the memories of Earth. Then the alarm sounded. A piercing tone filled the air. Daniel froze. His mug halted halfway to his lips. The proximity alarm had never gone off in 16 years. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Computer, show me the feed." A screen flickered to life on the wall. The image made his pulse race. Outside the front gate stood 9 figures. They huddled against the wind, their uniforms torn and their faces streaked with dust. They were women. Their skin glowed faintly violet beneath the desert sun. Intricate patterns shimmered like living tattoos across their arms and faces. Their eyes, bright and piercing, looked directly into the camera, as if they could see through the lens into him. Daniel's breath caught. One stepped forward. Her hair, long and white, whipped in the storm. She pressed her hands to the gate, and her lips moved as if calling out. Though no sound reached him, her expression carried desperation and determination. Daniel set the mug down with a trembling hand. He moved quickly to the wall where his old pulse rifle hung. It had been years since he had fired it, but his body remembered. His fingers checked the charge without thought. He stepped to the reinforced viewport near the entrance. Outside, the 9 women stood waiting. They carried no visible weapons. Their uniforms bore insignias he did not recognize. Yet one thing was clear. They were not settlers. They were soldiers. Daniel's instincts screamed caution. Strangers meant danger. Strangers meant war. But another part of him whispered something else. His dreams. For months he had seen her face in restless sleep. The woman who now stood at his gate had haunted him in the quiet hours of the night. He had thought it was loneliness playing tricks. Now she was here, alive and breathing. Suddenly the intercom crackled. Her voice carried through in halting but clear human speech. "Please, human man, we have nowhere else to go. Our men were taken by war. We are alone. Only you can help us survive." Daniel's hand tightened on the rifle. His jaw clenched. Every instinct born of survival warned him that this was a trap. But something else, deep and unexplainable, urged him forward. He pressed the speaker button. "Who are you? How did you find this place?" She stepped closer to the gate, her eyes bright as fire against the storm, locked with his. "I am Saren. We are the last survivors of the Northern Battalion. Our vessel crashed. We have walked for days. The patrols will find us soon. If they do, we will die." Daniel's throat went dry. He knew of the wars fought on this planet. He had built his exile to stay far from their fire. But now, war had found his door. Saren raised both hands against the gate. "I saw you in the dream visions. You were the one who would shelter us, the one who would not turn away." Daniel staggered back as her words struck him. The dreams. She knew. His heart pounded. His finger hovered over the release. Opening the gate would shatter everything. Keeping it closed would condemn them. He stood in silence, a man at war with himself. Then he pressed the control. The heavy gates began to slide open with a grinding roar. "Get inside," he ordered. His voice was sharp, but his hand trembled. "Quickly, before the storm grows worse." The women hurried in. The gate sealed shut behind them, cutting off the storm and locking in something far more dangerous. For the first time in 16 years, Daniel Carver was no longer alone. The compound, once silent and still, now breathed with new life. Daniel Carver had lived in silence for 16 years. Yet in a single day, his home had been filled with the voices and movements of 9 alien women. Their presence was a storm of sound against years of quiet. Their steps echoed on the steel floors. Their soft speech mixed with accents both strange and beautiful. Daniel felt his solitude shrinking with each passing moment. The women were exhausted. Their uniforms hung in tatters, streaked with dust and sand from their long walk across the desert. They carried nothing but their will to survive. Daniel led them to the common hall, a room that had once been a place of storage and silence. "There is water," he said simply. His voice was rough, uncertain, as if he had forgotten how to speak to others. They drank deeply, their violet-toned skin glowing faintly in the artificial light. The leader, Saren, met his gaze with quiet strength. "You have saved us," she whispered. But Daniel shook his head. "You saved yourselves. I only opened the gate." Yet even as he said it, he knew that opening the gate was a decision that had already begun to change everything. In the following days, the rhythm of the compound shifted. Daniel woke to the sound of movement, not the silence he had grown used to. Footsteps crossed the halls, Voices spoke in hushed tones. Laughter, soft and unexpected, drifted through the air. It unsettled him at first, but slowly he began to feel something he had not felt in years. Warmth. The women were not helpless. Each carried knowledge and skills shaped by years of war and survival. One, named Lena, examined the water filtration system with precise hands. "I trained as an engineer," she explained. "Your system is solid, but I can make it more efficient." Daniel watched as she worked, surprised by her calm confidence. Another, named Riva, moved to the hydroponic garden. She knelt beside the plants with practiced ease. "These crops are strong, but you can expand them with native seeds," she said. She showed Daniel a pouch she had kept hidden in her uniform. Small seeds, glowing faintly with violet markings, seeds from her home. Daniel found himself listening more than speaking. For years, he had spoken only to machines and to himself. Now he listened to stories of battlefields, of cities lit by 3 moons, of families lost to the endless war. Their words painted images of beauty and sorrow, and in those words, he saw the courage that had carried them to his gat. Saren stayed close to him. She carried the air of a leader, though her eyes often softened when they met his. One evening, as Daniel worked on the solar regulators, she joined him. "Your machines are old but strong," she said, watching as he tightened a panel. "They last because you cared for them." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. "It is survival, nothing more." Saren tilted her head, studying him. "No, it is hope." A man who truly wished to die would not maintain order so carefully. You were waiting, even if you did not know it. Her words struck him with quiet force. Daniel wanted to deny them, but deep inside, he wondered if she was right. Perhaps he had been waiting. Perhaps he had kept everything in perfect order because a part of him believed something, or someone, might one day arrive. Where once there had been silence, now there was life. Daniel struggled with the change. Part of him resisted. For so long, solitude had been his shield. But as he watched them work, eat, and laugh together, he began to realize how empty his life had been. The bond between him and Saren grew in ways he could not ignore. They spoke often in the quiet hours. She told him of her people's tradition of dream visions, a gift passed down for generations. She explained that her dreams had led her here, to him. "I saw your face," she confessed one night. "I saw your home. I knew you would not turn us away." Daniel felt a chill. "I dreamed of you," he admitted, voice low. "For months, I thought it was madness." Saren's eyes glowed in the dim light. It was not madness. It was the path. In that moment, Daniel felt the walls around his heart shift. For 16 years, he had convinced himself he wanted silence. Now he was forced to face a truth he had long denied. Silence had not been his choice. It had been his prison. That night, as he walked the halls of his compound, hearing the sound of voices and footsteps where once there had been only his own, Daniel realized something powerful. He was no longer a man surviving alone. He was part of something larger, and though he could not yet name it, he felt the first spark of belonging. The compound no longer felt like a place of exile. In only a few weeks, Daniel Carver had watched his fortress change into something far different. Where silence had once ruled, now came the sound of work, laughter, and voices carrying stories of a world beyond his walls. The 9 alien women had not only survived, they had begun to build. Their skills quickly turned the barren halls into living spaces. Lena, with her sharp mind for machines, restored broken circuits and repaired long-abandoned systems. Riva expanded the hydroponic garden, adding her native seeds, until rows of new plants sprouted green against the sterile steel. Another, named Kala, sang softly as she worked, her voice carrying a rhythm that seemed to soothe even Daniel's restless nights. Each woman contributed, and together they created a rhythm that felt like community. Daniel had not known how much he needed it until now. For 16 years, he had convinced himself that isolation was strength. But as he watched them bring life back into the compound, he began to understand that strength also came from sharing burdens. The most striking moment came when they invited him into one of their traditions. Siren explained it one evening as the suns fell low. "We hold a circle of memory," she said. "In this circle, we share not only words, but emotions. It is how we carry each other's pain and how we remember what has been lost." Daniel hesitated. The idea of opening his inner world to others unsettled him. Yet something in her voice urged him to join. That night, he stood with the 9 women in the common hall. They formed a circle, hands clasped, eyes closed. Siren guided him to place his hand within theirs. As the circle tightened, Daniel felt warmth flow into him. It was more than touch, it was memory. Images flashed through his mind, carried not from his own thoughts, but from theirs. He saw cities built from stone that shimmered like crystal. He saw forests under 3 moons. He felt the joy of festivals filled with light, the grief of war, the pain of separation. He felt their despair as they wandered the desert with no hope, and the relief when his gate finally opened. The flood of emotion left him shaking, yet strangely lighter. He saw them not only as strangers seeking shelter, but as survivors who had endured more than he could have imagined. He understood them, and they understood him. When the circle ended, the women looked at him with calm eyes. Siren's voice was gentle. "Now you are part of our bond, no longer only human, but one of us in spirit." Daniel could only nod. Words felt too small. The following morning, new discoveries changed the path of their future. While searching through an old storage bay, Lena and Riva uncovered a hidden structure. Under layers of dust and rust lay a dormant, long-range transmitter. Its surface was marked with Earth symbols, proof it had been part of the original outpost. Daniel stared at it in silence. Long ago, he had disabled the system. The transmitter had been his last tie to the human colonies and to the wars he had abandoned. Keeping it silent had been his way of severing himself from the past. Riva brushed dust from the panel. "It can be repaired," she said. "The parts are old, but they still breathe with life." Lena looked to Daniel. "With effort, we could restore it, but the choice is yours." For hours, Daniel wrestled with the decision. Activating the transmitter would mean exposure. It would mean drawing attention from both allies and enemies. It would destroy the last thread of his isolation. Yet as he looked around his transformed compound, filled with voices, laughter, and the presence of Siren, he realized isolation was already gone. That night, he walked the halls again. The walls glowed with light from torches the women had created, their violet flames giving warmth to steel. The common area was decorated with cloth dyed from native plants. Life pulsed in every corner. Siren joined him, walking at his side. "You are troubled," she said softly. "The transmitter," he admitted. "If we repair it, the world will know where we are. And if we do nothing, we stay hidden." But hidden from what? Hidden for how long? Siren studied him, her blue eyes steady. "You built this place to survive, but now you have more than survival. You have us. You have purpose again. Perhaps the universe brought us here so that you would remember." Her words struck deep. Daniel realized the truth he had avoided for years. He had been running not only from war, but from himself. The next morning, he gathered them all. "Repair it," he said firmly. "Restore the transmitter. But when it works, we decide together what messages we send. This place is no longer mine alone. It belongs to all of us." The women nodded, their faces shining with resolve. For the first time in many years, Daniel felt the weight of leadership return to his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a calling. As repairs began, he stood beside Saren on the observation deck. The suns cast golden light across the dunes. His voice was quiet, but steady. "For years, I thought silence was safety. Now I see it was only emptiness. You gave me reason to breathe." Saren reached for his hand. "And you gave us reason to live." Together, they looked out at the horizon, unaware of what waited beyond, but certain that whatever it was, they would face it as one. The transmitter came to life with a low hum, its lights glowing faintly in the dim chamber. After weeks of repair, the ancient machine finally stirred again. Daniel Carver stood with the 9 alien women around him, their eyes fixed on the screen. For years, he had hidden from the world. Now, with a single press of a button, his silence would end. He gave the order. The first signal carried out across the empty skies, rising beyond the dunes into the vastness of Aurora 9. It was not a message of war, but of presence. Daniel kept the words simple. His compound was a safe ground. No mention of the women, no mention of their past, only a call for peace and dialogue. At first there was no answer. Hours passed in tense silence. Then 2 messages came at once. One from a human settlement hundreds of miles away. Their leader expressed surprise that Daniel still lived and requested permission to send envoys. The second message, coded in the language of Saren's people, warned of enemy patrols moving south. It urged caution and silence. The group debated late into the night. Voices rose with worry and hope. Some feared exposure would bring danger. Others believed allies were their only chance of survival. Daniel listened carefully, then spoke with finality. "We cannot go back to silence. We choose to live, not just hide." His decision carried weight. The next morning, preparations began. Defenses were checked. Supplies were stored. The women worked with him, each using their skills to ready the compound. Their fears proved true. Before dawn, the alarm sounded again. Scouts from the syndicate were approaching, their vehicles crawling across the western ridge. 6 machines carrying soldiers had found them. Daniel moved swiftly, his old military training alive again. He directed the women into defensive positions. "We hold until help arrives," he said. His voice was calm, steady, stronger than he felt. Saren stood at his side. "Your people will come," she whispered. Daniel met her gaze and nodded. "And if they do not, we still stand." The syndicate scouts circled, testing the defenses. Automated turrets fired warning shots, and energy shields hummed under impact. The compound shook but held strong. Through the speakers came the voice of the enemy commander. He demanded surrender of the fugitives. His tone was sharp and confident. Daniel answered with equal resolve. "This compound is neutral under human law. You have no claim here." The voice on the other end laughed. "Law will not save you. Give us the women, or we will burn your walls." The connection ended. Silence pressed against them. Then Saren placed her hand on Daniel's arm. "They will not break us. We are not yours to give away. We are your family now." Minutes stretched into hours, but then the transmitter pinged again. Reinforcements were on the way. The human settlement was sending transports, and with them came unexpected allies. Remnants of Saren's people had joined forces with human commanders. Together, they moved to intercept the scouts. When the Allied ships appeared on the horizon, hope surged through the compound. The battle that followed was brief but fierce. Enemy forces, unprepared for such resistance, retreated into the desert. For the first time, Daniel saw victory not as survival, but as a beginning. Weeks passed, and the compound changed once more. Where once walls defined its limits, now new structures rose beyond them. Settlers arrived from the human outpost, seeking safety. Survivors from Saren's people came as well, guided by whispers of sanctuary. Daniel's home was no longer his alone. They had become a settlement, a place of unity. They named it Haven's Rise. With more hands came greater progress. The hydroponic gardens grew into fields. The storage bays became workshops. A school was built where children, human and alien, learned together. Daniel walked through the halls and open courtyards each day, amazed at what had grown from silence. In the heart of it all was Saren. She remained by his side, her strength quiet but unshakable. One evening, as the sun set, she revealed a truth that left Daniel speechless. She carried life within her, a child, a symbol of their bond and the bridge between two worlds. Daniel's chest tightened with emotion. For years, he had believed himself finished, a man who had given up on future and family. Now the future was real, and it was brighter than anything he had imagined. Life in Haven's Rise continued to grow. People worked, laughed, and dreamed together. They built not only walls of stone and steel, but trust that stretched beyond differences. Humans and Saren's people shared food, traditions, and stories. For the first time, Aurora 9 felt like more than a battlefield. It felt like home. Daniel often stood on the observation deck, the same place where silence had once been his only companion. Now, the sounds of life reached him from every corner. Children's laughter echoed across the courtyards. Voices of workers carried in the wind. Saren joined him there, her presence constant and grounding. "Do you regret opening the gate that day?" she asked softly. Daniel looked out at the settlement, at the lights that glowed under the twin suns, at the people who now called his home theirs. He thought of the child growing within Saren. He thought of the bond they had formed. Then he shook his head. "I regret only the years I spent closing myself away. The day I opened the gate, I found more than I ever thought possible." She smiled, her eyes bright with warmth. "You gave us a future, Daniel, and we gave you one in return." That night, as the two suns set and the desert wind calmed, Daniel understood what his life had become. Not a prison of silence, not a fortress of stone, but a place of connection, a home without walls. And for the first time in 16 years, he looked to the horizon, not with fear, but with hope.